Hi guys, my name is Jennifer and this is my final Bailey's Prize review for this year. It's not my final Bailey's video, I'll talk about the ones I have planned for the next week at the end, but for now let's talk about the 16th book from the long list, which is The Essex Serpent by Sarah Perry. If you're like me and you love a lot of British booktubers, you've seen this around since last summer, but it's only coming out in the US in June of this year. And this video is possible because Steve Donahue sent me this art copy. This was probably the most hyped book from the long list, and like with any hyped book, I was nervous going in. But now that I've read it, I'm also a huge fan. The writing is intricate without being cluttered, and it's just such a witty and spirited and joyful book. This is historical fiction. It takes place in England at the end of the 19th century, and we follow a bunch of different characters, but our two main ones are a woman named Cora Seaborn and a man named William Ransom. Cora lives in London, and her abusive husband has just died, leaving her free to shape the life she wants, which is one of science and discovery. She loves fossils and is fascinated by Darwin's theory of evolution and by the paleontologist Mary Anning. Will is a pastor in a small village in Essex, and he's content with his family life and his spiritual life. But his current problem is that the village believes that there's a mythical creature called the Essex Serpent that has just risen from the deep and is killing villagers as divine retribution for collective sin. And the two characters and worlds collide when Cora comes to Essex in search of the serpent. I'd describe this as Victorian light in that it has a lot of those features: colorful vocabulary, a focus on psychology, atmospheric nature descriptions, but it's written for a contemporary reader. So it's not straight imitation, it's more an homage to 19th century styles. It has a lot of strengths, but I think its main one is its fantastic characters. There are a lot of them in here, and there's not one that doesn't feel like a flesh and blood human. And if you're annoyed by characters that feel like they're just vehicles for themes, which is something I've gotten more and more annoyed about over the last year or so, this is a great book for you because it combines individual personalities and overarching themes. Like it seamlessly intertwines them and they feed off each other. At its heart, this is a commentary on how we go about making sense of the world. It looks at religion, tradition, and the afterlife versus science, progress, and this life. It also looks at the line between friendship and romantic love and between intellectual and physical passion. And this book subtly interrogates those categories and the lines that separate them. In the broadest sense, Cora represents the scientific side of the coin and Will represents the religious one, but they have these debates and discussions and they each hold their own and make great points. And they also have personal limitations and flaws and things they aren't willing to consider. Neither is inherently more logical or open-minded than the other, and Perry didn't write their conversations with an agenda. My favorite character by far is Francis, who's Cora's young son, and I've read and watched a lot of reviews on this now, and I understand why people describe him as anything from autistic to neurotic to maladjusted and antisocial. When you're reviewing, you have a limited space and time to give people a sense of these characters. But he's not categorized in this book, and I think that's so important that we see him as eccentric and emotionally detached from other characters' perspectives, and then we also get his perspective. There's a dinner party scene where he's under the table observing everything, and at the end he crawls out and thinks, well, what use was it to observe the human species and try to understand it? Their rules were fathomless and no more fixed than the wind. And we're meant to see that he's just trying to find patterns and meaning in life, just like everybody else, but that he finds those things through unconventional channels, and that really any worldview is odd when you take the time to examine it. One of my favorite scenes is between Will and Francis. They're on the beach, and Francis asks Will what sin is, and Will is like, oh God, this is my job as a parson. I've got to nail this one. So he has Francis throw a rock and try to hit something, and the rock falls short of the object. So Will says, that's all it is. To sin is to try, but fall short. Of course we cannot get it right each time, and so we try again. But then Francis is like, well, you told me to stand here and throw. What if I stood somewhere else, or if the object had been closer? And Will is like, yes. We think we know where we're aiming, and perhaps we do, But morning comes, and a change in the light, and we find out we should have been trying in a different direction after all. And Francis is getting frustrated. He's having none of this. And he says, but if it changes what I should do and what I shouldn't, how do I know where to aim? And how can it be my fault if I fail? And why should I be punished for it? And at the end of the scene, Will says to Francis, so how did I do? And Francis says, I don't know yet. I'll think about it. And it's just such an exquisite little scene that captures who they are as characters and also shows how everyday conversations are often brimming with these big questions. The Essex Serpent isn't at all plot driven, which I loved up to a point, but I will say that I think it lost energy in the last 50 pages. And it's so hyped, like to the point where I would say it doesn't exceed that hype. But in general, I loved this book. And despite what I just said about it coasting a little bit to the end, I would happily spend like 200 more pages with these characters and settings. They made me smile and sigh and think hard about life. It's so entertaining, and it makes a lot of gestures to other books and styles while keeping its own unique sparkle. Okay, so I said at the beginning I'd give you a lowdown on my remaining Bailey's videos, and here it is. I have 3 left. The first is going to be a wrap up and ranking and winner prediction for this year's shortlist. The second is going to be my personal shortlist because straight up, I think the judges got it so wrong this year, and I want to talk up the books that I think most deserve it. And the final video is ominously titled, What is a Literary Prize? So let me know your opinions about any of those video plans or on the Essex Serpent, and I'll see you soon in my next video. Bye guys, thanks for watching.